Blog
Well,
Talk
hello everyone.
Radio.
I'm glad I was able to get in. It's been very strange today. I haven't called into my studio in ages to try to actually use the studio to do a show, but I am just going to do a quick show today, and I'm just mostly going to play clips. I'm going to do a show on the Woolsey Fire in California, and I'm going to cover a little news, and this comes from wildfiretoday.com. The National Weather Service has issued what are called red flag warnings for much of California because of strong winds and low humidities. So the winds in California can be from 20 to 30, even 40 to 50 miles an hour, with very low humidities. I've heard that this fire called the Woolsey Fire has burned from Simi Valley, it's called, to the beach at Malibu in Southern California. And some websites are saying thousands of homes. Right here it says, for example, President Trump is in France, but early Saturday morning he weighed in on our Twitter with commentary about the wildfires in California this week. They have killed 9 people, destroyed 6,000 residences, burned 190,000 acres, and currently 200,000 people have been forced out of their homes. There's another fire that's called the Woolsey Fire. Besides the Woolsey Fire, there's another one called the Camp Fire, which is a strange name for what we're seeing here. I'm getting a message from a listener here. It says, a massive wall of wildfire rages in California. At least 9 people have died after a Northern California wildfire incinerated most of the town with a population of 30,000. Paradise, blazed near Paradise, California, put the total number of people forced from their homes at 157,000. I think we're at 200,000 now. So, and I'm just going to shut up here and just read a little bit more and then play some clips. The number of people that died has risen to 14 people that have died in this other fire, the Camp Fire. The Camp Fire burned 105,000 acres. But I'm kind of trying to get down here. The Woolsey Fire, 200,000 people have been evacuated. One of those is Joe Rogan. And another one, there was another UFC fighter, Chuck Liddell, I think, had to evacuate his home. The Woolsey Fire advanced the Pacific Ocean Friday, spreading 15 miles south to Simi Valley to Malibu. 75,000 homes have been evacuated, 200,000 residences. The operational area destroyed by the fire, they say, is very significant. I don't think they know exactly how many homes have been destroyed. People were trapped in Pepperdine University for a while. Anyway, if you bear with me just for a second, I'm going to find some clips for us to listen to. Here we go.
We begin with that breaking news. A state of emergency in California as deadly fires explode across the state. President Trump ordering federal assistance to help with the disaster.
Here's what we know right now. At least 9 people are confirmed dead in Northern California, where fast-moving flames wiped out an entire town. More than 6,000 homes have been destroyed there. The fire, now called the most destructive wildfire in the history of California. In Southern California, 2 major fires forcing the mandatory evacuations of more than 200,000 people, including the entire city of Malibu.
We have team coverage on the ground. Let's begin with ABC's senior meteorologist Rob Marciano in Malibu and the weather conditions fueling those flames. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Eva. The weather conditions are not good, as you very well know. Malibu, a beautiful spot, one of the most beautiful in the country, but now it is up in flames. We are at the Pepperdine University campus overlooking the Pacific Ocean. You can see behind me flames just to the west and north of this campus. which has not been evacuated. Over 3,000 students and faculty remain on this campus, so there is a furious effort to knock back the flames. They're actually using a fire hydrant on the center of this lawn to fuel up these choppers, and they're coming in one after the other to make night drops, something they don't usually do, but it tells you just how urgent this situation has become. The Woolsey Fire now over 30,000 acres burned. For more on that, let's get to Matt Gutman, who's live for us this morning. Good morning, Matt.
And Rob, those firefighters are so stretched, they can't even get to fires like this. This is a multi-million-dollar home south of Calabasas, where we are right now. In fact, this entire neighborhood has been obliterated. All the mountains around here are scorched and not a firefighter in sight. That's how stretched they are across Southern California this morning. I want you to take a quick look at this house. That's actually the main part of this home. There's a tennis court over there, and this is just the garage. This is all that's left to burn in this particular home here.
Overnight, those fires ousting hundreds of thousands of residents from their homes.
Report of 3 people trapped in a house.
People trapped in cars. There might be some injuries.
A line of fires in Southern California turning homes to cinders, racing across the landscape faster than firefighters can contain them. Residents like Rebecca Hackett desperate to outrun the flames, filming on Instagram as embers pelted her car.
Please, God, please let me out. I was really scared earlier. I was in shock. I definitely thought I was going to die. I thought I'm not going to make it out, but I just kept driving because I didn't know what else to do.
Earlier, officials ordering residents to evacuate in advance of the fires.
Mandatory evacuation of this area.
So much chaos that Pepperdine University apparently given mixed messages, leaving 3,500 students in the fire zone.
Just went back to our room to get some blankets.
All of them are okay this morning, but the aftermath here is apocalyptic. The Woolsey and Hill fires have grown to 40,000 acres in Ventura and Los Angeles counties.
I'm fairly certain it's gone. We stayed long enough to see the flames almost encircle the house.
Chaos. Fire engines everywhere. The houses near me were burning. Embers were flowing all across my house.
Fires forcing evacuations of star-studded neighborhoods like Malibu and Calabasas, with many celebrities posting to their social media accounts with their status, like Caitlyn Jenner on Instagram Friday, posting to her 9 million followers after news that her Malibu home likely burned down in the fire.
Don't know if the house made it or not.
And President Trump criticizing containment of the fires, tweeting, "There is no reason for these massive, deadly, and costly forest fires in California, except that forest management is so poor."
And again, Rob, you get a sense of what firefighters are going through, the heat coming off of just this garage burning right now, and what's left of this house is absolutely intense. Now, where you are, you're probably seeing a lot of police cruisers, a lot of firefighters, but they can't be everywhere at once. And one of the problems that we are encountering, and firefighters as well, is that they haven't been able to count the numbers of homes destroyed and damaged. There are just so many of them to go through. They'll probably get to those numbers later today, and you can tell how dangerous some of these situations are. Rob?
Well, absolutely, Matt. As you'd imagine, it is a frantic effort right now just to protect structures, as we're seeing here on the campus of Pepperdine University. This is a statewide event, though. It's been going on for days, and it started in Northern California with the largest, most destructive fire there, with at least 9 people dying in the Camp Fire. Live for us this morning in Paradise, California, is Will Carr. Good morning, Will.
Rob, there is a thick blanket of smoke across this area this morning as homes are still smoldering. A handful of those people who died in this fire were actually inside of their cars trying to race to safety, but it all just happened too fast. This is now the most destructive fire ever in California history, as this community has been reduced to rubble.
This morning, the death toll rising at the Camp Fire.
We now can confirm a total of 9 fatalities.
The blaze ripping through 90,000 acres of land, destroying more than 6,000 homes in just a few hours.
We're in a neighborhood surrounded by flames. You can see flames shooting out of the roof of this home, and then check out this tree right here. You have flames shooting hundreds of feet up into the air. This entire community is burned to the ground. Everything here is gone.
We're just hoping right now that our home's going to be okay. You know how sometimes there's a home that's it's okay. We're hoping that home is ours.
We're about 95% sure our house is gone.
This weekend, large parts of the community look like a bomb exploded, leaving only rubble and heartbreak behind.
It's devastated. We're grateful that we got people out as quickly as we did yesterday, but we have a lot to do to rebuild.
27,000 residents still under an evacuation.
Well, that's probably a good place to stop for now. I got a couple calling guests here I want to bring on the air. I think this first is Daniel.
Yes, hello.
Thank you for calling in. I think I've got Eve on the line, too. Let me bring her on. Eve?
Great.
Hey, Mark.
Welcome. We got Daniel on the line here as well.
Great.
Which
so
Eve
we got
is
a couple FIGU people, and I just wanted to talk to you guys. I haven't done a show all year on the fires. This one right now looks like a monster. 200,000 people evacuated, 6,000 homes destroyed. People like Caitlyn Jenner, Joe Rogan, Chuck Liddell have had to evacuate their homes. Pepperdine University was on lockdown for a while, but they finally got the students out. 14 people have died, hundreds of thousands of acres destroyed. I guess Billy's right again. What do you guys think?
It was always going to happen, I guess.
Man,
if we didn't do anything, we didn't do nothing.
These fires, they just bother me. They just disturb me. This is too real for me.
You remember, Mark, I think I was still living in California at the time, and I was calling in much more regularly than I have been. But I believe those fires, we talked about those walls of fire and all of that fire. This was some years ago. I believe it was right around Florida. We were talking about that, but here it is. It is now, because story after story after story that I've been reading actually use the term in their story, walls of fire.
Is that what it says in the Enoch prophecy specifically? Rolling walls of fire will rage across the United States. It says something like that, doesn't it?
I think so. I don't know. I don't have the contact note or anything handy, but I remember talking about this exclusively with you, but here it is. It's crazy.
Go ahead.
And there's also, I was just wondering if that was related to some weapons technology as well. Not this particular event, I mean, that's happening now, but what's mentioned in the prophecies with the walls of fire, I was wondering. I thought there was something mentioned in terms of some new weapons technology or something like that, which would be
well,
lighting
that
up the
thought
atmosphere.
is quite valid thought, because I was even talking to this older gentleman, and we were talking about the fires, and I was talking about how I was living out there, and I'm glad I moved. And I brought that fact up. I said, it's so weird, a house will burn and the trees around it won't be burning. And it just is spot all over the place. And this guy said, yeah, I think the same thing. And everybody says, oh, you're just into conspiracy theories. But this is not, this is not some, illogical thought, I don't think.
Well,
I don't know if the two things are related, but I thought it just was two different separate things. That's what I was saying. But, yeah. Anyway, well, it sounds pretty serious what's going on down there. Jeez.
Well, let me read
they don't
this.
have snow. Go ahead.
Let me read this in context, because one of the difficult things about the Enoch prophecies is there's so much information in just 2 or 3 lines. You almost have to break it up and then just kind of think about it a while. It says here, yet all the apocalyptic events, which is what I'm seeing, these are apocalyptic. I mean, this is stuff that, they make movies out of. Yet all the apocalyptic events will not only be brought about due to the use of unbelievably deadly and destructive weapons, you were talking about weapons, such as chemical, laser, and others. Don't know if some of these fires are caused by weapons or not. Some people say they are. And this is part we haven't seen yet, but we could see, and by clone murder machines. So we're going to see the cloning of people to use them as soldiers. But in addition to this, the earth and nature, maltreated to the deepest depths by the irresponsible human beings, will rise up and cause destruction and bring death unto the earth. Is this what we're seeing? Is the earth and nature rising up here? What do you guys think?
I think that the fracking, so much fracking of the earth crust is creating holes from the, down deep, and it's just, creating from the magma, type of thing. It's probably just breaking out all over.
Well,
but that's just speculation on my part.
The people in Switzerland spend a lot of time cleaning up the dead wood, don't they, Daniel?
Mm-hmm. I was just watching.
But we don't seem to do that
actually
in the United States, particularly in the West. They're not.
Mm-hmm.
They're not maintaining the forests the way they should be. Correct?
But these fires aren't starting in the forests. I mean,
where are they starting at?
And look at. I'll have to research that. That I've read numerous stories about. Trump is said he's threatening to stop funding because California is mismanaging their forest. And so he's going to stop funding if they don't shape up. But the thing is most of that is federal land. So it's kind of crazy.
It is.
But
crazy.
apparently it's not starting in the forest. But I don't have any proof on that. So it's just speculation on what I've read and how that goes.
Let me bring Daniel back in. He's calling in from Canada anyway. There. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah. No, well, I know, for instance, here in the north, there was some research done in the last quite a while around the bison that keep hanging around the highways. And the reason they're doing that is because the forests are so overgrown, and they keep putting the fires out all the time. And so the problem with that is that all the dead brush and everything grows underneath, and the animals can't walk through there anymore. And then when you get a real fire going through there, all that stuff is just accumulated, and it's just fuel, and it burns everything, like the topsoil. Everything is just completely burned out. And so then it's really difficult for forests to regrow after that, and so on and so forth. You see that a lot of in some
Make
of the
sure I'm
forest
understanding
fires.
what you're saying. Sorry to interrupt you. To make sure I understand what you're saying, because I think I've heard this kind of thing before. Because we interrupt the smaller fires, the brush doesn't get burned away, so it accumulates, and then when we do have a fire, it's completely out of control and destroys everything, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're seeing record-breaking fires everywhere. And, you see back in the 70s, the size of the general, usual size of the biggest fires were not even, half of what we're seeing these days. And
right.
So it's not just a climate change thing. Certainly that contributes to it. But the other problem is, of course, when you have overpopulation, you have cities, you want to protect the cities from forest fires, so then you put the fires out everywhere, and then this undergrowth never disappears. And the natives here back in the day would purposely make fires so that when they came back to those regions, years later, it would all be, lush, beautiful forest, and the life would be thriving. And so they stopped doing that, and there's, very unhealthy forests, first of all, and so it's very difficult to bring in the wildlife, back into certain areas and so on and so forth too. So they were very well aware of the positive side of generating these smaller fires, so that it would burn away the brush, the dead brush, and so on, so that the real life that's really there can really thrive. And that's why, for example, in Switzerland, you do see a lot of the people there that are taking care of their forests and making sure that it's not getting overgrown. They're making sure that the dead brush and so on and so forth is gone. They don't necessarily burn it out. They do it physically, which is a big job. But it's either that or what you're seeing probably now in many parts of the world. So it's very unfortunate.
Daniel, I think that's very well said. I think you're right on the ball. 100%. Eve, do you think maybe you saved your life by getting the heck out of there?
No, but I certainly saved myself. There hasn't been any fires where I came from, but I certainly saved myself from inhaling a ton of smoke, which I experienced for a decade before I left. There was always fires going on out there.
Man, there must be a part of me that, doesn't completely believe the prophecies, or maybe I'm just partially asleep, because when I see this kind of thing, it's just this massive wake-up call for me. I don't know if you guys have this a similar kind of effect at all. Maybe I'm just a little more sleeping than some people. I don't know.
What I find interesting is the terminology that they're using in the reports now, walls of fire. And if you do a search on the internet and walls of fire, California fires, you'll see story after story using that exact terminology.
Wow. It says here, enormous firestorms and gigantic hurricanes will sweep over the U.S. and bring devastation, destruction, and annihilation. I'm hoping, I'm so naive, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to escape a lot of this and that people are going to wake up. But, geez, man, when I see these fires, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's not crazy, is it? It's exactly, everything in the universe has an exact cause and effect. It's not crazy. It's exactly where it should be. And unfortunately, we've ignored the problems, and that's exactly where we are. So it's just kind of the way things go in nature. If you don't wear your coat on and it's minus 40 outside, you freeze to death.
You're going to freeze to death.
It's just the way it is. Yeah.
To your point here, I found it. I found your phrase. As already mentioned, enormous natural catastrophes and rolling walls of fire and violent hurricanes will rage across the U.S. There it is. It was a little bit farther. So it does say walls of fire.
Perfect.
Amazing.
So that puts asleep my notion. Of any weapons, whatever. But I guess.
Well, there could be still. I think we're just. We're just starting to see.
I think there is.
We're just beginning to get our mind wrapped around. And wait till the Civil War start, right?
Don't you think they've already started in a way? They're smoldering, let's say.
Yeah, I think so. Well, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to play a little bit more of the next clip, and I'll play it for a while, and then we can chat a little bit more about it. We've only got about 30 minutes left in the show. Stay as long as you can. I understand if you have to leave, but I'm going to just mute you for a little while and play the next clip.
Go for it.
All righty. Here we go.
Tonight, the infernos in California, wildfires claiming more lives and property up and down the coast.
I'm devastated. I'm heartbroken. I'm alone. I'm scared.
We're in one town reeling from back-to-back disasters this week. Return of the Florida recount. When will elections for governor and senator of the Sunshine State finally be settled? Commemorating the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, a solemn American memorial, the president absent, as new questions surface about the balance of power in Europe and in the world. With warming waters off the coast of Maine, what will become of the state's billion-dollar lobster industry? Plus, preventing heart attacks and strokes. Millions are at risk. And there's some big news out this afternoon about a pill that could help protect you. And icons of the American West under threat, the wild horses and the people working to save them.
This is NBC Nightly News with Jose Diaz-Balart.
Good evening. Parts of California are hell on earth tonight. 3 massive wildfires are burning out of control. The largest in Northern California is now the most destructive in the state's history. To the south, 2 others are ripping through seaside communities. More than 174,000 acres already destroyed. And today, the news that at least 11 people have died. Dozens are missing. NBC's Kathy Park is in Malibu, one of the hardest hit areas, under alert tonight. Kathy.
Jose, here in Malibu, the home behind me is a total loss. Firefighters are still actively on the front lines, now waiting for the winds to come back. And in Northern California, a major wildfire there obliterated one community, is now threatening another.
I thought you were still over there. I'm right here. Yeah, I got you.
Ferocious flames in Southern California tearing through the region, destroying homes and lives.
I just came around the corner. I'm like, is that house burned? You can see through it.
Michelle Musseter lost everything.
My babies grew up in this house.
Overnight, the Woolsey Fire doubling in size, fanned by fierce Santa Ana winds, forcing massive evacuations, including animals, dozens of horses staying calm in the chaos. The entire city of Malibu threatened.
Fire crew were doing a great job, but they were underpowered, really, and it was so overwhelming.
Iconic beaches charred. This glitzy celebrity enclave a ghost town. Nearby Pepperdine University had students sheltering in place. Today, crews are not only battling fires, they're fighting fatigue. More than 5,000 firefighters working around the clock. Meantime, in Northern California, the town of Paradise practically wiped off the map.
Paradise is gone.
The so-called Camp Fire is the most destructive wildfire in California's history.
Oh my God, the fire took everything.
At the height of the firestorm, panicked residents escaped as flames roared on both sides of the road. Many abandoned their cars. Some didn't make it out. Thousands have nothing left.
I'm devastated. I'm heartbroken. I'm alone. I'm scared.
Tonight, the Golden State glowing up and down, staying on high alert as dry conditions and heavy winds return, making the dynamic situation even worse. Kathy Park, NBC News, Malibu.
And in Thousand Oaks, it was really a 1-2 punch. Just 24 hours after living through that horrific mass shooting at the Borderline Bar and Grill, residents there were hit with the fires. NBC's Steve Patterson met some of the people there.
In the span of just one day, a community reeling from what felt like insurmountable tragedy was struck again. A fast-moving wildfire sparking widespread evacuations 24 hours after a mass shooting.
It's kind of like Mother Nature kicking us while we're down.
Ventura County Sheriff Sergeant Eric Busho was on scene after a shooter opened fire at the Borderline Bar and Grill. 12 people shot and killed, including Sergeant Rod Heelis, his friend and colleague of nearly 30 years.
If ever there was somebody that embodied the word hero, he's it. He died a hero.
Then, after working 19 hours, Busho and his family, along with thousands of others, were forced to evacuate. Dozens of homes destroyed.
How do you deal with all that? I don't know. There's no playbook for this, to be honest with you. To have these two incidents just right overlapping each other is unprecedented.
At the center of both tragedies, the Thousand Oaks Teen Center, first a reunification center for devastated families, now an evacuation center.
Emotions are high and they're varying.
The Red Cross working around the clock.
Wow, I'm absolutely speechless. It's like I'm living in a movie. I have the hardest time covering these fires. I used to cover them on a week-by-week basis, but anymore it's just too disturbing. Please comment, Daniel.
Well, I guess nobody's immune, are they? I mean, no matter how much money you have, there it is going through one of the richer neighborhoods in the States, I guess, and there they are. You know, everyone goes down to the Titanic.
All the Hollywood people. I mean, think of the wake-up call. It's staggering.
That's the thing, exactly. And I think, the negatives are so important for our understanding of what goes on in nature and in creation, laws of cause and effect. To avoid the negatives, it just creates bigger negatives. And this is what
wow, that's a very profound statement. So by not letting the smaller fires burn, we've created a gigantic problem.
Or just by not acknowledging the smaller fires that we've created in terms of maybe, other symbolic fires in terms of just ignoring nature in many other ways and so on, which has resulted in this
There's got to be multiple causes: overpopulation, the mismanagement of the forest. And I think the conditions for fires probably increase as we burn out more places. Because a lot of the trees create a turbulence that helps to form clouds, and that probably goes hand in hand with the drought. And Eve, you lived through the drought too, didn't you?
I did.
Was that terrible or what?
Yeah, 10 years of it before I left.
The other thing, and we were talking about this, Eve, just before the show started, there's a lot of turmoil among the FIGU groups, and I think we really need to start to work on that and fix that. That concerns me as well. Any comments at all on that?
Well, I think they're doing the best they can as far as the U.S. goes. We voted on becoming a FIGU group quite a few times, and it was deemed that we just weren't evolved enough and to really do it. And my fear is that they're going to try and start another one that's not going to, go about it from the get-go in the right manner and the right protocols set in place. And it would be another failed, another failed. There are some groups that are like the one in California is doing very well. And
are they?
That was because they followed a certain protocol according to the FIGU guidelines. And I think that that's really important to do and not just jump into it. Because of all of these world events and national events, people are really seeing the prophecies really manifesting before our eyes now. And from what I understand, that there's a kind of a surge of people talking about coming up here again. And just got to be careful in forming an official FIGU group here in the United States because of the failures of before.
Daniel, do you have any thoughts on any of this?
Well, I guess where do you start? It's a big thing. I guess a lot of countries do have have managed to pull themselves together in terms of long-term groups staying together and so on. And as they mentioned in the contact reports, there's a very strong sense, I guess, in the States of having to be the leader and all this kind of stuff, and that just isn't reasonable. Somebody asked Billy, what do you think about leadership? And he said, just forget about it. and I kind of thought about that. I thought about that, and I thought, yeah, you know what? Because, anyone who ever thinks they're the leader, then they think that they are entitled to have everyone just listen to them and all this kind of stuff. And, even at the center, they have to vote on things. And, Billy's not the one who makes the decisions. And it's a very Swiss attitude. And they vote on issues 4 times a year, referendums that are law-binding, not just a bunch of BS. And, Canada hasn't even seen a referendum in over 25 years. So,
really?
And much less the States, I think, probably even less than that. So, we vote for politicians who are these self-professed leaders, and who they end up being is these people who are just paid off by whoever, and they're there to make money and to get reelected. They're not there to help people, or, in Switzerland, it just cuts out the middleman. You don't have these politicians who are, high and mighty, whatever, and think that they can just make decisions for everybody else. They have to vote on an issue. Get 10,000 signatures, it gets voted on. Period, paragraph, that's it. So that's how it works there. It's an actual democracy. Well, it's a half democracy, and it's much stronger democracy than anywhere on the planet by far. So So that's why you have those different attitudes, and that's why they started this in Switzerland. It just makes total sense. And people just have a tendency there to work more together, to be less, overbearing towards each other and all this kind of stuff. And you see that even at the center, that the people there, they all have different ideas about how things work. One guy might be into, tractors and guns and all this kind of stuff, and the other might be into flowers and whatever. And, even they butt heads sometimes, but they manage to make it work, and they've managed to make it work for decades, for many decades. And they're friends, and they still work together, and it's wonderful to see that even if they have differences, they can still work together. But that's what you just don't see a lot of in especially today's political climate. And I was talking with someone the other day, just even here in Canada, and he just got so angry about something. He said, "No, I can't talk about it anymore. I can't talk about it anymore." I thought, we were just talking about immigration, illegal immigration.
Gosh.
And he just shut up. And this is a person I've been able to talk to in the past, quite openly. But then he then apologized, and everything was fine and whatever. But that's one out of a million. Usually people don't get to the point where they can apologize even years later, much less minutes later.
I have to apologize to Eve because I always call her Eve, and it's really Ev, right?
Mm-hmm. Usually, but that's okay, Mark.
I've been doing it for years now, so it's okay.
Yes, you have.
I'm very sorry, Ev. How did you two guys get to know each other? Was it Facebook?
Oh, I was tuned into Daniel's sighting when he was in Switzerland, and I just went, "Oh my God, this is awesome!" That's when I contacted you to get him on the show. I believe this is Daniel, right? Daniel Cooper. Is that you?
Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was you on the other side there either. So.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? You guys have a talk?
Yeah. It was just. I was right there on your Facebook post when it was happening, and I found it incredibly exciting. And so that's when I contacted Mark, and I said, "You got to get this guy on the show."
Well, I appreciate it. It's been interesting because it allowed me to bring the calculations public for the first time, and I didn't even know if I would at that point. So that really helped.
Now you actually got to take photographs of a ship in Switzerland, and Billy knew the group that was flying that ship, so to speak, right?
Yeah, he wasn't in direct contact with them ever, but it's another group that kind of watches over things there. And what a cool sighting that was! Like bright, broad daylight, and this thing kept changing shape constantly, and you could see it was just a bright light in the middle of the day. Like,
color was different too. The color was changing or something.
Yeah, it kept changing color, kept changing shape. Like the shape was just completely different every second. Like it's just like, what the hell is that? And then I got my camera out and zoomed in, and it got even weirder. So I thought, okay, usually it's the opposite.
Yeah, and he was posting them on Facebook, and I was following it right there, and I just, it was just awesome.
Yeah.
And that happened while you were visiting Switzerland, right?
In 2016, I believe. Yeah. So.
That's very, very interesting. And the ship was actually changing shapes. They have a technology that allows them to literally morph their shape back and forth.
Well, it's not that. I guess it projects an image of itself like many kilometers away, so that if the military or whatever here decides to scramble their jets and go chase them, it doesn't bother them because they're just whatever. And so it changes the shape of the actual projection. The ship itself is not changing. So yeah.
That's interesting.
So it's a good way to protect themselves, and they can just keep doing their work while who knows what. So.
And the people, and I assume they were humans that were piloting this ship. I remember Billy had a word for them. Their name began with the letter D. Is that true?
Druon.
I can't remember.
Druon. Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly where they were from, but whatever, it doesn't matter. It was neat. It was fun. Yeah.
So that's how you two met, and And I remember Ev saying, you got to get this guy on the show, and then we touch base. And then, we've talked about what you call your calculations, which are basically kind of a prediction of why at a very young age you thought Switzerland had to be the place, and et cetera, that had to occur in the 70s and all that. And you know what's really cool? I think the FIGU Canada is just doing a super job in general.
Yeah.
You guys, the work of Michael Uderbrook, man, I always study his movies over and over again. They're so good. Have you seen the one on reincarnation?
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah,
I wish he would do more of that. Have you heard from him at all? Do you keep in touch with him at all? Or?
I'm totally on the other side of the country, which is, as you know, a very big country, and unfortunately I don't have much contact with them. Actually, it's easier for me to get to Switzerland than it is to get to Toronto, so go figure. And cheaper.
That's so crazy. All right, I'm going to play the next clip for just a few minutes, and then we'll close the show. We've only got like 15 minutes left, but I thought these fires were worth paying a little attention to. So here we go, folks.
You're looking live at chopper pictures from our Sky 9 this morning. You can see the amount of smoke that's just hanging in the sky. The winds have died down, which is giving firefighters a break and a chance to switch out crews after nearly 2 days on the fire lines. But of course, no end in sight for these fires. It is still not contained at this point, the Woolsey Fire.
That's right, Suzanne. I'm Peter Dowd. Thanks for being with us, folks. 200,000 people and 75,000 homes have been evacuated, at least 39,000 acres gone. This fire still at zero containment. As we mentioned, the Woolsey Fire is still growing at a very slow pace. Again, the good news, the winds are starting to die down. That was the biggest factor in how quickly they spread yesterday. Still heading towards the coast, though, and officials say at least 2 people have died. It's unknown yet if those deaths are actually connected to the fire. So definitely still a lot of concern right now for people all across our region. We also talked about the air quality and how bad it is. So even if you're not directly in the vicinity of the flames, you're still going to be impacted because we all have to breathe this air that now is just so smoky, so much ash. People's cars are now covered in ash. People who have asthma issues or the elderly, they're the most susceptible.
That's right. And of course, in Pepperdine, there is major concern for some parents with kids who attend the university. Many students are staying on campus despite evacuation orders for the city of Malibu.
KCAL9's Joy Benedict is live outside of the campus with the details on that. Good morning, Joy.
Good morning. Yeah, certainly a very, concerning situation for many people who were out here overnight trying to figure out exactly what was going on here at Pepperdine, as everybody was getting emails and tweets saying people weren't allowed to leave. We have since learned that may not have been the whole truth, although some students may have felt that way. But first I want to show you the good news. I want to show you the hillside over here behind Pepperdine University, which does appear to be clear right now as the fire has moved on from this area. Of course, that was not the case just a few hours ago. And we did start getting some emails and concerns of that nature from folks here. Here's a couple that we read. One saying, "My daughter is telling me they are being held in the cafeteria, not allowed to leave while the fire approaches and the rest of Malibu is evacuating." And then another one saying, "As I understand it, there was a mandatory evacuation of Malibu. Why would they not be moving these students? Having hundreds of children die in a fire because they had a faulty plan and restricted the students' ability to evacuate would be a tragedy of epic proportions." So we come up here at about 3 o'clock this morning trying to get in, and here is what we saw. There was a lot of flames. They were small flames, but they were approaching the area where the students were evacuated or put into a shelter in place, probably about 100 yards away or so. Now, the Pepperdine University, the officials here did not want to let us into the evacuation area. They did not want to talk to us about what was going on, which sort of just added to the confusion of exactly what was happening up here. But we are being assured now that the students were allowed to leave if they wanted to, and that they have had this plan to shelter in place for a very long time. And I want to come out live now. I have a former student, someone who was staying with her mother-in-law up there last night. So you did shelter in place with all the students up here. Yes. Fallon Opsahl Barton. You graduated, I guess, last year?
Yes, in April.
So how was it up there last night?
It was predominantly very, very calm. Students, of course, did have some anxieties. I mean, it's really scary, especially at around 10:30 when the fire did crest over the hill. It's scary to see your community threatened by a fire like that. But in all of the past fires that have happened on the Pepperdine campus, from what I understand from people who have been here for many of the past fires, that happens pretty much every year or every time this has happened.
Well, here we are, folks. I wish it wasn't true, but the Billy Meyer prophecies are coming true again. You're listening to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, and let me just reiterate something that Contact Report 215 says here. As already mentioned, enormous natural catastrophes and rolling walls of fire and violent hurricanes will rage across America, while in addition all the terrible effects of war will bring thousandfold death, destruction, and annihilation. So maybe that's what's coming next. And then the next section says America's largest cities will be absolutely destroyed and firestorms will cause great disaster and misery. So I do have Ev, and Daniel here to give us a few closing thoughts. Daniel, I'll let you start out if you have any final words you'd like to say. And thanks for coming on the show here with no notice whatsoever.
You're welcome. Well, I guess, I always have these meditations on my desk and the 77 meditations, and I was just looking over, and I just thought, oh, yeah, that's very pertinent to, what's going on in the world and dealing with it. And I'll read a couple of them.
Sure.
One is number 55. I'm always hopeful and thus cope with even the most difficult things. And number 56, the more problems I cope with, the more knowing, wiser, and livelier I become. And I think it's important to remember that because, when anybody has, I know for myself personally, whenever I've had a cognitive dissonance about anything, I always decided to run towards it and to try and uncover why I feel so uncomfortable about it. Most people, in my experience, around me anyways, have done exactly the opposite. And I think that's the number one source of our problems today. And if we could just go towards the uncomfortable in ourselves, that would be really helpful in uncovering all kinds of truths and getting over many of the taboos that kind of keep our whole society held back. And I think that would be fantastic.
Now, these that you were reading from are the 77 meditative sentences?
Yes.
So okay. And if people want to find those, they can go out to the Future of Mankind site and look those up. Those are really helpful. Ev, did you have any final closing thoughts you want to share with us?
No, the only thing I can think of at the moment is there's a lot is going on, and there's going to be a lot more. It's going to get stronger and stronger. I think the best that anyone can do, in my opinion, is to study the spiritual material and become more and more acquainted with that. I think that's about the only thing you can do, and work on yourself, like Daniel said. And I am so far from it at times. Oh, my gosh.
Aren't we all?
Well, I want to thank both of you for joining me on no notice. And it's important, I think, that we get these shows out there so people have a chance, because what's coming is really kind of beyond what our mind can even imagine at this point. So try to get a hold of the books like The Might of Thoughts and The Psyche and The Way to Live and The Goblet of Truth, and read things like these 77 meditative sentences and bring yourself back into harmony, because we're going to have to deal with many things coming in our future. And we have a way out. We do have the creational natural laws, like love, like striving, like harmony. And we're going to find our way through this mess. We're just seeing the beginning of the fulfilling of the prophecies, and things are going to get even more interesting. Thanks, everyone. You've been listening to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. Have a great day.